So we want to be talking about the problem,
Yeah.
the research that we've done to date, and the product that we're then going to build. So
Yes.
the product is Briefing Room, and the area that we're looking at is the segment of early stage founders and early stage investors. So that's something that we've experienced, is how do those two groups of people stay in touch, stay up to date, know what metrics are good metrics to share, build a trusting relationship, be highly engaged with each other, because we believe that good engagement with early investors means obviously stronger advisors and stronger business decisions.
So when you're approaching a problem, because you've done this for Kendaba and you've done it for a couple of other things, what are some of the pitfalls when people are trying to assess whether or not a problem is actually real or not? Because my worry is that, like, literally this is a problem that I have, because I want to give our shareholders like a really nice experience.
Yep.
Especially since we have a few shareholders that have lots of different portfolio companies, and obviously their time is quite short, like quite precious, and I want them to be as engaged as possible so that they know that we send regular updates, that we're professional, but also if we have a problem that they kind of have some background of, and we're at a slightly higher point of top of mind so that they can jump in and help. But I say that and I'm like, yeah, this thing will definitely help us.
Sure.
Or at least it'll help me.
And then the worry is, but Gelb, you're really special.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's a lot of assumptions that we're making there, right?
Yeah.
So do other people have the problem? Even if other people have the problem, is it a problem they want to solve? Because actually having a problem and wanting to solve the problem, or paying to solve the problem, are different things. Those are things we want to test. So is it a pain point that people feel deeply enough that they will pay for? I think the direction is something that we're going to have to look at really interestingly. Is it about founders communicating with investors? Is it the opposite way around?
Yeah.
Which element, which side, which angle of that problem will we end up actually delivering for?
And so my initial thinking about how to figure out if that's right would be to say, like, so this is the idea. What do you think? And I know and it's teeing you up. I know that's wrong, but why is it actually wrong?
Well, because we're placing an idea in somebody's head, right? So we're saying, see this thing that you do, this is a way of doing it easier, would you use it? And people tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, sure, yeah, maybe I'd use it. Would they really? What's really interesting about customer discovery, and what I absolutely love, is that you get to use active listening, right? So you get to understand and just ask people about whatever that area of their life is. So if you're an early stage founder, who are you? What's your business about? What do you find easy about running your business? What do you find difficult? Investors, interesting. Do you have investors? How many investors? You want to really be just inquisitive, interested. You want to reflect the language that the people that are telling you things, you want to reflect their language back to them, so that you're not placing ideas in people's minds, because otherwise we're just fulfilling our own prophecy, and there is no point in building something just for us.
So talk about the mom test and how that kind of encapsulates it.
Yeah, this has come up a lot in the past few weeks. It's a really, really good book. It's bright yellow, isn't it? So you notice it when it's on people's shelves, but it's such a good starting point. If you're wondering, okay, but how do I go out there and ask questions of my potential customers? And we'll share it on our resources channel on Slack as well, so that you can get access and know what books we're talking about throughout the week. But it's all about how to use open language, open-ended questions when you're researching, doing your customer interviews. And it's over what period of time do you do it, and over what period of time, like, when does that end? And I don't think that ever ends, that customer discovery and customer development, because we should always be tweaking, well, what's the next feature set? Is it needed or is it not? And that should always be customer led.
Yeah, so it's about almost like profiling, or pretending like you can profile your customers beforehand, and then creating a question or a set of questions that validates your hypothesis without you having led the person there.
Yeah, does it validate your hypothesis?
Like, I have a feeling,
are you proving that it doesn't?
I have a feeling you're going to answer a certain way without telling you that.
Yeah, you don't want to tell somebody that, but also do we want to prove ourselves right? We probably do. So we need to be really careful about that when we write questions. Yeah. Because maybe we should be trying to prove ourselves wrong.
So here's my concern with our specific market that we're looking at. And I know that we went through this exercise a couple weeks back, just in thinking. Fundamentally, what we're building is we're building a tool for you to send emails, and for you to have a passwordless link, so a customized link in that email that then takes someone into a beautiful dashboard or a space about whatever it is that you're sharing. Now that could be relevant for nonprofits. That could be relevant for open source projects. I don't know. Membership organizations. So basically a low friction way of creating something that you wish that people like had a login and password, but you know that nobody will ever use that, right? That's the thinking behind it. But it could be applicable to a lot of different areas. And we've decided to reduce that into just looking at startups, just looking at early stage startups, and looking at early stage startups that have shareholders. And my concern with that is that early stage startups and early stage founders are very opinionated. And on one hand, I'm really worried that we're going to be, disappointed, or we're going to be convinced that there isn't a need there, even though because of the diversity of different types of founders, there might be. And on the flip side, we might be so convinced that because of the diversity of founders, that there are a subset of people that might need it, and we're going to be blind to the fact that actually it's not a big enough problem. So I'm just worried about everything.
It is a lot of worry.
Yeah.
I guess all you can see is that every stage is an experiment and a learning. So we're trying to make sure that we're validating our learning, that we're testing our assumptions, and we want to do that at every stage of the game. So that's on what we build, when we build it, what features we build, if it's the right problem that we're solving. We're not going to achieve all that in a week, and I think that is really important for us to recognize. We're going to build something this week and test it, but throughout that process and through engaging with potential customers, we're going to have a way better understanding of who those people are. Now, this is us concertining down into 1 week.
I was about to say that's probably one of the reasons.
Startups we spend a year just doing initial research for Kindaba without even then starting development, which we then continued and really understood those different subsegments once we were building. So this isn't the norm. It's to try and show everything that we do this week is going to be a little bit of what people will spend weeks, months doing. But I think the important thing about customer development is it's not something you do at the beginning and then you stop and then you build. It's something that you continuously do.
And then just the last thing before we get into the actual question that we asked is that a lot of people watching might be thinking, you're really doing a lot of work for something that doesn't have a lot of validation yet.
Fair.
That's true. And we're not saying that we're sticking to like the lean startup principles entirely, partially because, and if you watch our chat on Friday, you can talk about, you can listen to Ben's thinking behind this, but partially because we're not interested in building like an MVP that isn't viable when it comes to revenue. And because we're time boxing it anyway, we're thinking, well, how can we just get as much stuff as we can done so that at the end of the week, either we have something that solves a problem and that we can, make some money from. Great, ideal.
Sure.
But if we don't make it that far, we'll still have a product that we can then pivot, that we can look at, or we might have to be reframing it, or we might have to have validated that there is no concern, but we've only spent a week on it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more like thinking of this would be one experiment within a startup within a business that you were running, right?
Exactly.
So this is a 1 week sprint.
Yeah.
And we are using this particular product to develop that 1 week sprint, but we're going to have the chance, like you say, to pivot, to decide if this is a problem, to test and challenge language market fit. So is the language that we're using really resonating with the segment that we're speaking to? We've already had discussions about, are we interested in solving for this segment, or are we specifically interested in creating a communication tool that really works? And it doesn't matter, like you said, if that's for membership organizations or not. And for us, we're fascinated by those early stage founders, those early stage investors, and part of what we've done already is speaking to a shed load of them. And it's those people that we want to understand and that we want to solve a problem for. So
then let's talk about that problem. So talk me through, I will get the thing on the screen, but what was the question that we ended up asking? Why did we ask it like that?
So I want to rewind even way beyond that, because I think it's completely natural, and it was definitely what we did. But we want to ask people all of the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to know what they have for breakfast and why. But definitely that should be your starting point. And when you're speaking to someone face to face, or you're able to have a call with them, then it should be as free flowing a conversation as possible. But when you're doing this kind of test, this kind of mum test remotely, so you're maybe writing a survey and you're trying to get information that way, you need to understand the user experience part of it, right? How much of your time are you willing to give to help someone else in their research? We're all super busy people. We all have notifications flying at us all day, every day. A lot of people ask a lot of us. So what could we do that was going to have the minimum resistance and the minimum barriers for someone to actually spend their time giving us some useful insight?
Yeah. So
I think we did the classic and over-engineered, in my opinion, our first round of this, and we will show you the progression.
Yeah.
We hummed and hawed about what tools to use, what questions to ask, who were we asking those questions of. So we were asking investors and we were asking founders. Would they be different questions? Would they be the same questions? How are they open? How do we give them, and this was a real sticking point for me, how do we give people enough freedom to use and choose their own language whilst recognizing that people don't read, I don't read, and people don't like to write, like I don't like to write. You want to just click something, you don't want to take the time to actually get your keyboard and type something when you're trying to give somebody an answer. So those are real world, and I think everything that we do this week is going to come back to that. There's definitely the theoretical ideal, and then there's, okay, but what's the just get it done?
Yeah, exactly.
What's the, I need to get some information about, is this a problem from you? So I think we can talk through the really potentially overcomplicated and very complex, if not beautiful, layout that we initially had and all of the questions. And I would really be interested to hear other people's experience of this, especially that difference between, because I'm much more comfortable in personal customer interview situations where I can sit down and, whether even if that's over Zoom, if I can sit down and have a conversation with somebody and just take the questions where it leads, reflect back to them, than writing a survey and getting people's responses.
Okay, so why don't we show you
so
what we started with?
The tool that we used was landbot.io, and let's show what we initially started with.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
It's pretty
I'm
complex.
gonna put this on the screen. Hopefully everyone can see this. I'm gonna put it up. And
looks pretty.
go there. Right. Okay. So first, what was our first one? Was that like our was that the?
Not Unibot. Go up to the top.
That was that. That was the most.
It was just survey, wasn't it?
It was just.
Or was it mum customer? Yeah, this was the first one because I don't think we even finished it. So part of the
let's get started. Anyway, sorry. Keep going.
Part of this was, so definitely a process I go through. I have all the questions. How do you then map that, and how do you then start detailing, but if they answer this and if they answer that? Yeah. So this was like a simple way for us to show these are the different directions of conversation that they could go, and the different routes that they could answer. What even was this first version?
I
think this was
just the generic. This is just the test. This is just a show. This isn't our stuff.
Yeah. So this was like a template for this is how a survey could work.
Exactly. Okay.
So I think
let's go
mum customer test was like the first, and this was only, I think this was only the founder's side of the decision making tree essentially. Yeah. So we were thinking of both founders and investors, and this. I liked our gift game.
This was it. Yeah, our gift game was good. So basically, so just so that you know, I'm gonna load this up.
Oh, we should show it in both.
Yeah, I'm gonna show the actual link to it.
That is available on our Slack as well, and some people tested it for us. Great being able to do the flow, the number of dead ends that you reached because we hadn't tied it back in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But we abandoned it before we.
It went live.
Okay, so this is the actual folder.
We did a good few tests. Nice. Okay, so you're going to be able to see the flow and how we created it, and
can you? How do I? Oh, maybe I need to do it in a private window. So we went with Landbot because it's a conversation. It's not like a survey. So I kind of feel like at least initially, it's just like you're talking, like
Yes,
exactly
so
like you're
this
on the
was
Zoom.
why, because I often say if I could just get in front of every potential customer and have a conversation with them, I would be comfortable.
Exactly.
So I wanted a way to make it as conversational as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah. And I have to say that like Landbot is really good for those kind of things where you want to capture some information, but you don't really know what information they're gonna be using.
come up with.
It's just that for us, we actually have very specific things that we want people to
We
answer.
kind of learned through the process, didn't we? Like what tool would have been best.
Yeah. Okay, so keep going. So this is what. So should we just go through, just show people how it looks?
Yeah, so you can see like it's drag and drop, and if they click one, where do they then go? But let's do it on the preview and actually answer the question.
Okay, so hi. So like hi takes us to that message.
Which
You
my
move your
head is in the way.
Couple few things.
So things
Right.
that we were thinking about with layout was like the bold means that if you don't read a lot, you're at least able to read the bits that are important. The emojis are helping us with tone, and you're getting them to click things because you're testing that whole yes, I will give you a response. Yes, I will give you a response.
Yeah. So okay,
Move my head out of the
okie
way. Wow.
So and just right, that's fine.
That was something else that we didn't really know how to handle, right? Like how do we say you can use we won't use your information in a way that you don't like. This is how it will comply with GDPR. How do you do that in a conversational, chatty?
Yeah, chatty way.
Like it was exactly. That was a
Yeah,
barrier. That was a difficulty.
Exactly. And also, but clearly we wanted to take advantage of Landbot. If you scoot over, Gelb. Okay, sorry, never mind. You can go back.
What
You
you
can go
mean,
back. You can go
Gelb?
back. And so email was right at the front because we thought, well, this is a good lead gen opportunity.
Sure.
Because at the end, if people said they want to keep up to date, they've already given us their email, so we can tell them about the product. So,
broccoli and cake was involved, and we were trying to be kind of cute and funny. Does that work when you're just trying to glean information?
oh yeah, that was if you were asking about the trends. I don't know. So then, we were trying to.
We were drilling in deep to Intel, weren't we?
Yeah, we were trying to get all this information and then use it a little bit. So and even if they left, at this point, we still got at least some of that information. But I don't think. And then you chose if you're a founder or investor.
So this took us to two different decision trees. One if you're a founder, and one set of questions
so you can
if you're
see
an investor.
Marketplace, deep tech. Where is it? I'm a founder. I'm an investor. So I picked a founder. So it's. If you can see, we can shift over to this one if you want. You can just sit normally. So like for founders, we were asking about like what's the size of your company because we don't know, who is this for? Is it for people that are between 0 and 10 in terms of company size or much larger companies? We don't know.
And is it going to be about company size? Is it going to be founding round size? Is it going to be date since birth?
Yep. Like how would you describe your company? Maybe we'll find that this is only for SaaS companies,
Sure.
or maybe it's only for social networks or deep tech or whatever. And then we asked specific questions like, what SaaS companies does your company pay for? The thinking behind that was if you are the kind of person that pays for a lot of SaaS things, you're probably not going to be as opposed to paying for us, right?
Because there are definitely some people who, I'm bootstrapping my business, I don't have investors, I literally am not paying for anything. This is not the target market.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need to find out what else are they paying for.
Yeah.
Can we match it to the same sort of price point?
Sure. And then personal productivity products is, again, like maybe you as a founder do like to pay for SaaS products. You might see this actually as not a business tool, but a personal tool to keep you interacting with your founders. So that was the thinking behind that.
So I had trouble with this one.
Yeah, as in why?
No. So when I was having discussions with people, it could have been the way that I was phrasing it, because it wasn't my question. I felt like people didn't understand it.
Yeah.
So people sometimes were like,
Why would I
you
pay
mean
for
things that I personally pay for and the company doesn't pay for? And so I wonder if your separation, it would be useful to describe what you think of as a company-wide, a team, a multi-individuals, many individual people using it, as opposed to just like you need one DocSend account. We don't need 5 DocSend accounts.
Yeah. So I was thinking about it like that. Oh, sorry. I was thinking about it. Like the DocSend. Alan's giving me the stink eye. I'm sorry about that. yeah, like DocSend, for example, which I'd like to go into because I think they're doing something really interesting that could be kind of like a competitor, like an alternative. But like a DocSend account is where you can share things. I think it's designed for salespeople, but it's very personal, and the whole team doesn't use it. So I was thinking, oh well, you might consider that as a company thing that you pay for, or a personal thing you pay for, or like, do you pay for Bear? Like I pay for Bear, the note taking, or Evernote. That might be a personal thing that you pay for. But if you are the kind of person that pays for personal things,
so if
you're more likely to
have less resistance to pay for an individual SaaS product. And I think that is interesting though. Can SaaS products, do they define that way? Do they separate themselves as you've described them, as a personal or a team one, or is it the price? Because when we've done our research, and we'll dive into that with pricing, they're obviously very different stages, and we were thinking, so if you're paying £15 a month, what kind of products are you paying that for? And it's mostly I am one person, one user, and me, the company are paying for it, but it's for me individually to use.
Yeah. So then other questions you'd expect: how many shareholders do you have? How often do you update shareholders? Because
again, ideally, if you're being true to the mum test, you don't want to put in suggestions.
Exactly.
Right? So you don't want to say, "Is it weekly?"
This is all me.
Weekly?
This is all me.
Is it weekly? Pick weekly. I mean, the order that we put these in, the words that we use, which button looks prettier to them, like. We're influencing people, and that's difficult.
So anyway, you can see all of these questions, and then we
talked about scales. What's the best scale to use? We have a whole debate about, do you use percentages or do you use fractions, or how do you describe this?
A question like this: if a company, if Kendavo were having a very difficult challenge, what percentage of your shareholders would you feel comfortable turning to for advice? Like, this is already a very deep survey.
Imagine this. And imagine this scenario, and imagine what you would then do. And
we're not there yet. We haven't even talked about, and then finally it finishes. But we haven't even talked about the investor side. But the reason why I loved this was if we could get 1,000 people to actually fill that out. Yeah. Like, think of the information that we would have had. Yeah, right. That we would have, because also you have to have the emails at the very beginning. Sure. Like that's what we had.
But I think this is interesting information, right? What information? I'm sure other people with products have had this test as well. What information do you have to go out there and find through research? Yeah. And what information are you going to glean from people personally giving that to you? Yeah. So actually, how much of this is market research that should be separate from an individual customer test?
Yeah, I know.
And I think that's where we tried to get all of those things merged together in one.
And also, when we were showing this to some people, they were like, I don't want to answer that, or why am I giving you my email right now? Very rational, normal questions.
Right, you have to earn an email, which,
exactly,
of course.
Exactly. So we changed it.
I mean, that took us quite some time.
It did. Let me get the emails.
Also, I would love to hear your stories. If anyone else have gone through talking about a pain point, it was what questions to ask, what tools to use, what survey to put up. Like this was a challenge for us. Even communicating between the two of us, like which direction we wanted to go in.
Yeah,
like that was I find that a difficult
process. So let me get the
or
email.
You sure now?
I'm gonna say that this is the email that we then shifted to, and that combined that and.
Do we have? I think we have on Landbot.
Yeah, we do.
We have another version. Buffering.
Okay. So this is the Landbot, what the Landbot looked like.
And do you agree? Is this right? Is this wrong? How have you gone about it in the past?
So this is the survey that we figured out. So question number 1, founder. Move your head. What are your top 3 pain points you have when interacting with current shareholders?
This is really funny.
So
we should have just done this.
1 issue, 2 issue, 3. Done. And then at the end saying, if you want to trying to earn it, if you'd like early access to a product and information about our live stream, enter your email below.
So we had more success, more people filling in. It was 1 question that they had to answer. How many clicks was that though? 3?
3 clicks.
We did have the whole, you have to remember to hold shift and enter for a new line, so some people would only fill one
Which
and then
is
it would be done. And you're like, well, we gleaned one piece of information. So it wasn't necessarily the perfect makeup.
Yeah.
But it was simpler, it was faster. It still looked pretty because I'm all about the emojis and the bold and the people don't read a lot of text.
But we also did it in an email first. So like the email that we were sending around to people.
So the first port of call was, you don't even have to fill in a survey, like just respond to me with your 3 things, done. So it meant we had to do the legwork of collecting those responses, we had to compile them in one place, but we were trying to make it as simple as possible for people to give us their opinions.
Yeah, I'll show you what the email looked like just for interest. So what have we found with this? What does it all mean?
So super honestly, listening to investors and founders talk about each other is fascinating.
Yeah.
So I think we found that everyone's experience is really different for sure. What works for them and what doesn't. I think it's a very broad area for a problem. It's not very niche. Like, what are the 3 things that you like, or what are the 3 things that are most difficult about this? It really could be anything. I definitely find we didn't have the qualifier in the second one of, do you have shareholders? And although we tried to do that with our outreach, so what was the question we asked? Which communities did we post them in? Obviously for us, the segment are going to be people who have multiple shareholders.
And we got some responses that are like, I have no problems because I don't have any shareholders, and nobody should have shareholders. Yeah, which is fine. But we there were a couple things that stood out to me watching the responses come in. From the investors, a lot of it was about non-regular updates. Infrequent updates, not being willing to talk about the bad stuff that's happening.
Not having the same format, so it was really easy for them. And I can definitely, maybe that's just a personality thing, but I can imagine that if I had to look for different information in a different layout each time, not knowing which I was comparing with what, even if it was simple as that box in the top right hand corner is the same piece of information that I'm comparing from last week or last month, definitely if that really stood out to me. They're just like, what am I looking at? What is it in relevance to what it was before, or what your aims were? And that willingness to talk about the difficult, the hard points, the things that are going wrong. So that was from the investors' side.
Yeah, and then the
founders
side.
So for me, I think what stood out for the founders, it's funny because it's 2 sides of the one problem, isn't it? They were like, well, because we don't know what they want. We don't know what they want to see. We don't know what's too much. We don't know what's too little. I don't know how frequent or how often it should be. So there was a lot of uncertainty. That's what I read from the responses.
And I think from the beginning, we were thinking that this might be an issue of trust and bandwidth.
Trust in terms of, do I want to share my full metrics with my investors, or?
Yeah, well, like, hey, we're not doing so well, or we're having a challenge, so should we be sharing this?
You're the guys who fund us, so maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe that will be destroying the relationship.
There's another thing that I had kind of wanted to test through this, and like a target market, right? It's those same founders who are looking for potentially future investors. So there's this tactic. Jason Calacanis writes about it in his book Angel, and really interesting book in terms of how to become an angel investor, basically.
But as a founder, you read it.
You should read it,
because you then know
what
are angels looking for, what are they thinking, what do they expect to see from founders.
Exactly.
It's brilliant for that.
And so one of the points that he makes, I think it's a really good point, is you don't want to be hiding things from your investors, and you certainly don't want to be hiding things for people who might become your investors. So why not be as open as you can from the beginning? And so he encourages people to ask to be added onto updates. That's not necessarily giving you full access to your company's books or whatever.
You're a founder. I'm a potential angel, or I'm an angel investor, potential investor in your company.
Yeah.
We've had a coffee, and maybe you weren't even raising right then. We were just having a catch up. And you say, so are you happy for me to keep you in the loop? I'm like, yeah, sure. So you then choose what to send out to people like
Exactly. Me. And the reason why I'm doing that is that how many coffees are you going to have this week?
So how many?
Dozens, loads. You're not going to remember who I am.
No.
And also you're probably not going to remember
your business.
My business. But maybe in 3 months, you'll have seen my name a few times, and you'll start reading it. And if it's short enough, if it's detailed enough, and if it's open enough,
Yes.
you might say, oh, actually, this is quite interesting. I might keep up to date.
Even really simple things like if the way that you lay out your subject matter of your email is the same every time,
Yeah.
then you're right. It's about recognition. So it's about brand recognition, and essentially it's your brand, your business's brand that you're trying to flag up to the potential investor.
So anyway, but again, I don't know if that's me or if it's founders, and I don't know how much education would be required, because that might sound great to you if you're listening and you're a founder. Oh yeah, maybe I haven't thought about that. I'm going to start adding people who may be future investors to like my monthly updates. First off, what do you put in those updates, which we can talk about in terms of what some people have advised. But also, like, is that okay? Are you feeling okay doing that? And what benefits will it actually bring you? And more importantly, what drawbacks? You know, if you're sharing information, is someone gonna take your idea? If someone's gonna benchmark you against other people? And I think that's important.
Mostly, it's the benchmarking fear.
It's the benchmarking fear. Like, yeah,
like
exactly.
you're going to take my metrics. You're going to look at other potential portfolio companies, and you're going to be comparing them.
And internally, the biggest fear is things change all the time, especially early stage. So if we're saying, oh, you know what, we're planning on doing a seed round of 300,000 in 2 months.
Then the number of the raise changes,
Yeah,
or the
exactly.
makeup of the
Like,
raise,
oh,
or who
did I
your
say
lead
300,000?
investor is.
I mean 500,000.
Or the fact you're going to be crowdfunding versus
Exactly. It all changes.
Or your revenue stream.
Yeah.
Maybe it was going to be this and this, and now it's something completely different.
And like I sometimes was feeling like I didn't trust. I was not trusting investors enough to be okay with that. Whereas that's ridiculous. I mean, they've seen this dozens of times before. The one thing that is probably true about whatever it is that we say we think is going to happen is it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
that
I mean,
way.
this morning, perfect example.
Exactly.
So on that point, though, I want to pause because I have been reminded by someone in our community, which I'm loving because we're getting messages flooding in, that on the half hour I should be saying, hey, welcome if you're joining us. This is the Zero to Revenue Challenge. I'm Lizzie Bruff and this is Gil.
Yep.
And we are taking a product from idea to revenue within 1 week. So each new segment we will be putting out with its own description so that you know what we'll be discussing in that time frame. And if you haven't already, joined our Slack community, because we have got great conversations flowing and people prompting us and reminding us. And all of that we've just discussed about Mum Test, the example that we used, which we think was over-engineered, the one was super stripped back, that was really simple. Which do you think is right in your eyes? What experience have you had of running Mum Test yourself?
So I think we should switch to talking about competitors and alternatives. So since that was on the schedule.
Next on the schedule.
Well, thank you very much for letting
Fabs.
us that.
Yeah.
Fabs. Anybody who's watching, please do join the Slack so that you can come in and start chatting with us, ask us questions, tell us when you think we're saying stuff that doesn't make any sense.
And the other thing, just because we have often said this as a team, but I think we want to share it with the wider community, if you are comfortable doing so, we would always recommend and encourage you to share it in public channels, because if you have a question or if you have a suggestion, I'm sure other people would love to see that too. So of course, feel free to drop us a direct message, but I'm sure other people would love to see your impact and your input as well.
So I think talking about competitors and alternatives, we have not done a huge amount of specific research about this yet. So I think we should take like the next 25 minutes to actually do that live. And I think the easiest way to do that is to use another one of these really cool tools that we've found along the way, which is Milanote.
Yeah.
And so what I was thinking of doing is creating a Milanote.
So I'm going to describe Milanote while you do
I set it
that,
up.
because Milanote came about because I was saying to Gelb, I think just earlier this year, like just at the beginning of the new year, I've got so many ideas in my head, I've got lots of, it's all kind of all floating around like this, and what I want is just a room where I can post-it note every wall in the room, and I can write all my ideas up and I can move them around. And then you said, because you're the tools guy, I found Milanote and I think it's exactly what you were looking for. So I've used this for a couple of projects since, and I have loved it because I'm such a visual person. So we're going to show you how it works by just building one for the competitor analysis. And I think another thing to mention is we haven't done this yet because we have been doing our research on what the problem is.
Yeah.
And I think only now we're having done that survey, having done our customer interviews and Mum Tests so far, we can start looking at, okay, we know the space, who are the alternatives?
So why don't we, so I've invited you to this, so you should be able to also look at this, and let's just start doing our own research and then adding them on here as notes and as screenshots. I think specifically what would be good is finding either direct competitors or alternatives, having some sort of a screenshot and saying what we like about it and what we don't like about it.
Sure.
So that also this would be helpful when looking into what we're building. Maybe that there are some ideas that we hadn't thought about, or maybe there are things that are used for different purposes that people are making do with. So if you use something to update your investors or to give them some sort of a portal, and you are a relatively early stage company, so not talking about much larger companies that have full-on share management systems, tell us, what do you use? Just add it into the Slack channel.
Yeah, so we have a Slack channel exactly for this. So if you want to either help us with our research by going out and doing some searching yourself, or if you want to tell us what you use, we would love to hear you. In Slack, it's called Alternatives.
Yeah. Use the alternatives channel, pop it in there, and we'll do this quietly. And,
working away.
And at the top of the hour, we'll see what we've come up with. If I'm finding one, I'll just start by writing it so that we're not duplicating them.
I keep trying to drag it onto that screen. Well, that's not my screen. This is my screen. Some of these websites are making me laugh. This one has people in corporate wear dancing in slow motion.
Yeah.
Don't know if you feel about that, but they're rocking life.
You sent. I'm going to separate these down. Yeah, spaces. I'm going to bold anything that I think is like hyper relevant to what we're doing.
Yeah, good plan.
So nice. Get used to this.
I can do that with the others.
Yeah, I just think. What? Oh, it's the screenshots?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Then we can just go through them. Come on now. Oh, there's something playing in my browser. Is there? Let's see. If anybody's listening and you can hear a noise in the background, I promise I'm not doing it on purpose. Let me see, what could it be? Doesn't look like there's any. Alright, I'll close all these. Sorry, Alan, let me see if that fixed it.
Any luck?
That work? Yeah, cool. Sorry, everyone.
Free advertising, whoever else.
Yeah. Oh, are you doing Carta? Oh, you did that. Okay.
Done.
Gust.
I'm doing Founders Suite.
You're doing. Okay. Okay.
I'm just doing the screenshots.
Okay, go for it. I've done new column. Oh, you're using it properly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It looks good.
How do you do new column?
So
Oh, I see. Column there. And I can drag this in there.
you can also select like 3 or 4 and then right
put 'em
click
in.
group and column and it just swaps them
Okay, cool. New column, document. Let me get this.
Oh, hidden feature lists.
Hidden feature lists?
View full feature list.
Oh.
I'm
Great.
showing
Yeah.
you some.
You know what? I'm gonna
Pay for these ones.
Well, at least if you, I thought you said that they were saying like hidden features.
Or you just will never know. It's like a mystery bag.
Yeah.
Pay for it, see what you get.
couple minutes, should we look at?
Do review. Well, we could. So.
Ooh, I found another one. Hang on.
The last minute.
Better one. All right.
So we've had new teammates come in and join us in the room. So we're just going to say hello and grab us on Slack, and we can make sure we're all up to date. But it's been a good morning. It's been well.
Oh, this is cool.
I think I've got, this one.
Nice. Oh, I'm going to take a picture of this one. I have this really cool extension on Chrome that's a full page screen capture, and it just goes down and it just captures the entire screen.
I forgot I had that.
Do you have that?
Only because she told me about it.
Oh, okay. So look at this. I love it. Boom. Should have used that at the beginning. I forgot to use about it too.
That's the thing with the tools. You need to know which ones to use at what time to remember.
Okay. All right. So what have you found? Do you want to talk through some of the ones that you found?
I think it'd be cool to group them and talk about them as
Okay.
types of ones. So like the DocSend-esque ones and the more portfolio management ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's basically tools that people are using in a kind of hacking it together way that might completely suffice.
Okay.
And then there are more.
And maybe the closest ones are. All right. So should we do that now?
Yeah. We could color coordinate the ones that are together.
Cool. So.
I can do it.
Okay. Hacky ones or sales tools.
Yeah,
like
sales tools that are used for sending to
DocSend and
groups of
attach.
people.
Yeah.
So let's put them
That would be
blue,
DocSend and
DocSend and attach.
Like professional, high-end, actual like stock management. Is
Yep.
Carta and Gust.
So we've got Gust and Carta are like stock management, portfolio type ones.
And then I think so. Founder Suite is also kind of in sales a little bit. Like Founder Suite is like a CRM for finding investors.
Sure,
So
but it is specifically for that segment. It's not just wider.
Founder Suite is more targeted at our market, but their focus is not on updates, even though they have a little update module. It seems like visible.vc from my brief looking at it is the closest thing to what we're doing.
The full page screenshot was the jam. The way forward.
Yeah, so this is like a little intense.
So what's its pricing structure? How do they?
So it seems like
what's its offering?
visible. So you have there seems to be kind of like what we're thinking. There's a thing for founders and there's a thing for investors. Updates your investors want. So it's like a beautiful investor update with metrics. You can also add in a whole bunch of data. So like it syncs with your, like, whether it's Sheets or Xero or Stripe. You can create charts and visualizations within it, which is pretty cool.
So is it partially solving the kind of how do I get my metrics out there issue, and partially solving that it looks like a mess?
Yeah, I mean, the way that they look is beautiful. Here, I'll show up the thing. So,
That's good.
So updates your investors want. So they're definitely showing, they're highlighting the nice looking of it, the ease of getting your data in. So that was a problem that we were hearing, that people were like, I don't know what data to put in. I don't want to have to keep copying things around.
Yeah, so they're constantly taking data from one tool that they're using to another, and they're trying to input them all.
Yeah.
And that could be challenging across different markets of businesses.
Yeah.
But we heard a lot from SaaS founders, well, it's the same metrics. Why isn't there something that just gathers all my stuff?
Exactly. So investors engaged. So look, that's exactly what we want to do. Who's reading your updates? How often? Draft an update for you. Lists. That's definitely what we're looking for. The mediums they already use. I wonder what that means in terms of like other things. But then they also have an investors aspect of it too, which is again something that we were thinking about. So we were thinking about like founders sending out better investor updates and keeping track of engagement, but then also especially early stage investors will have dozens and dozens of companies and they can't keep track of it all. And so that's a bigger problem, and I think something that we want to look at later. But how do you create something that might help with that noise and help like organize it and segment it without making your founders sign up to something? And I think that's the key. Portfolio insights and reporting. I wonder, founder first, company updates reporting. So it seems like if this is for you requesting updates from your portfolio company, so interesting. So they're like requiring, I wonder if this is if your company uses this, or if you have multiple companies use this or not. Interesting. Okay, cool. So I think this is actually the most relevant in terms of like what could Briefing Room look like in a few years, or in a few months, right? I guess it could look like this. Their pricing though doesn't look to me like it's designed for early stage founders. So
putting a slight pause on it just quickly, because we need to get in the habit of doing this. It is just gone on top of the
10
hour.
o'clock.
So we want to do a quick welcome to everyone who's joined us. We are Lizzie and Gil from the Zero to Revenue Challenge. We're taking a product from idea to revenue in 1 week. And we've just been asked by our Slack community, can you give me a wee reminder of what the product is that we're developing? So we've just been looking at the moment at competitors. We know that we're looking at a problem within the early stage investors and early stage founders space. And the problem we're trying to solve is how to easily update those investors if you're an early stage founder. So the product, will be called Briefing Room, and we're yet to decide what kind of features and what that will look like.
Yeah, exactly.
So a good prompt for a recap.
Yep.
So thank you very much from the community for doing that for us, and do keep prompting us.
So, and what we've just been doing is we've been looking up competitors and alternatives. So what are people using to try and solve the problem as it is right now? We found this visible.vc. Seems to be the closest direct thing, although it looks like it's designed for a bit more farther along companies. Like,
do you say that because of the pricing? So you're thinking, well, they've probably raised a bigger round, they have more shareholders, so the pain point is higher, and they're able to pay for a solution to that.
I guess so. I mean, like, I think
that's the assumption.
That's the assumption. I mean, it is a high price point. Maybe founders are willing to pay for that, but I'm kind of thinking, if the starting plan, if the starting plan is $99 a month, but actually $125 if you're paying it monthly,
sure,
and then you're up to $200 a month. I imagine that you're doing that because you have like a lot of shareholders. Maybe you have like VCs that you're working with, and they need like more structured reporting. But again, these are just assumptions. And the fact that they even have an enterprise plan means, well, maybe they're looking to design, and their example companies that they have.
Do they have a blog? I want to know who their target market is.
Founders Forward blog up at the top there.
Look.
So if you see like Allbirds is not an early stage startup. So I kind of feel like they're positioning
Find
themselves.
a way to get Allbirds in there.
Of course. Well,
it's like you planted it.
but see, look, like my portfolio. Look at what they're talking about. Allbirds, Drift, InVision, Slack, themselves,
Much
right?
bigger companies.
Yeah, much bigger companies. And maybe they're just trying to showcase that from a vision perspective.
Or maybe that's where the market is.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I guess I'm interested in why isn't there a product for those that are just before this? And then maybe the answer is because
the need isn't great
the
enough.
need isn't great enough. But I feel like this is the closest thing that we have right now. Cool. Okay. So one thing that we wanted to do is try and look at business model canvas.
I like their blog.
They're using the same. So there's this there's this like open, I don't know,
Really like when we see them everywhere
illustration library, and so they're using it. I don't know. Wait, let me get it on the screen.
We shout out to the designer who introduced us to that,
Yeah, exactly.
because they
Mena,
are
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. So they're these little these little people, right? And you see them everywhere. Once you know that it's like an open library, you start to see them everywhere. But anyone can use them. But it's funny. Okay, so business model canvas time.
Yeah, time is flying by. Let's hop on to that. So let's keep using Milanote for it. I think it'll be a good layout. Do they have a template for this already?
I think they do. Oh, actually, do I? Oh, I should have done that before. Templates, startups, a lean canvas. That's what I'm going to do. So what is a lean canvas or a business model canvas? For everyone who doesn't know.
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes.
So this is going to be a roundabout way of answering the question, but
Yeah.
we recently had the opportunity to sit in on pre-founders or early founders meetings who were talking about their businesses. And what came up a couple of times from some people, and it can be tempting, is to create a business
plan.
A business. Did you know I was going to say that?
30
A
pages.
business plan. Exactly, a 30-page business plan. And people from different backgrounds tend to think that that's the way to go. But I guess because a startup, if you're trying to create and add value and you don't necessarily know what the value is that you're going to bring yet, the whole point in startup is iterating to discover that. Then actually, the moment that you write a 30-page business plan, it should be and will be out of date. So lean canvas is, the aim is to be able to essentially on the back of an envelope, how would you just be noting the key things that would be the key metrics, the things that would move the needle on moving you towards finding that value proposition.
Yeah, kind of like if you want to be able to just articulate what it is that you're doing, also from just a thought exercise for yourself. Lean canvas, business model canvas, there are a few of these that if it's on a piece of paper, the idea is to get it all on a piece of paper. So we have a digital piece of paper right here, and let's check it out. So their Milanote's example is a new printed flooring company, right? So you have these different blocks, right? You have problem, solution, key metrics, unique value proposition, your unfair advantage, your customer segments, your channels, your path to your customers, the cost structure, your fixed and variable costs, revenue streams, and that is it. And so we don't know the answers to all of these right now.
The great thing about it is, as well as you're meant to just rewrite it and rewrite
Exactly.
it, right? So you overwrite, and we should do that with this one. So we should just pop ours in what we think it is, and each of them will either be validated or we'll be able to tweak them as we go.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to clear the example content. Right. So. Okay. Today. Do you want to try and tackle one of these things?
Give me a sec.
Or we can just talk through it.
Yeah, sure. Happy to talk through it.
So we've been sharing some stuff, or our awesome LMT has been sharing some stuff on Twitter as we're going along, sharing some relevant articles about stuff that we're talking about, and we'll also be sharing it on the Slack channel. But feel free to read along or
And if you
deep
have
dive.
some favorites yourselves, the go-to ones that you always use for these topics, then share it away. We can all learn from each other.
If you post anything on resources, we're also going to be assembling a resource library at the end of this, so we'll be sharing all that kind of stuff, so it won't be lost. Right, Lean Canvas. So, since we've been talking about customers this morning, should we start with the problem?
Yeah.
Always start with problem, right?
Let's list the top 3 problems of your customers or users. So number 1, I'm an early stage founder, and I find it arduous to update my investors. It's difficult, it's messy, it's time consuming. It's unclear.
Email updates are hard, and when we say hard, we mean like it's unclear, there's not a good definition of success, and you're also
Don't
worried.
know what the expectations are, I have a fear
Right.
about it.
Are hard, okay.
This isn't something that we can necessarily tackle, but something that has come out of the customer interviews is there's, for some people, you know how we all show our emotions like also visibly. You ask people about doing customer updates, and like it's stressful, I don't like it.
Yeah.
So there's a dislike for the task
Yeah,
because you just want to be getting on running your business.
exactly.
You don't want to
Exactly.
be updating someone about your business that you're running.
Yeah.
So that's a resistance to doing it. So I wonder if there is, and that's something that investors have said,
Sure.
like a resistance for founders to share.
Then there's also the, at least another thing that came out is about the engagement, or at least I'm using the word engagement, but it's the
Developing
attentiveness.
a relationship.
Exactly,
Like the conversational flow, having a two-sided partnership.
yeah. How do we articulate it?
How do we bullet point it?
Give and take, the challenge with.
Maybe we do say engagement and we know how we've defined that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's something that has come out of the customer interviews is engagement is as appropriate per founder and per investor.
Keeping shareholders engaged.
Yeah.
Because engaged and updated are two different things.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's definitely I don't just like speaking to the void. I want to hear back. I want to have questions.
Another thing that I think investors articulated one way, founders articulated another way, but they're actually the same thing, is like knowing how to help. So like investors are like, well, you're not taking advantage of of my expertise because you're not telling me things. And founders are saying,
Don't know what I can ask for.
I don't, yeah, exactly. And also I don't know if you're willing to give the time to do that.
If I
So
ask, will it be offensive to you?
Yeah,
or will
exactly.
it be okay?
Yeah, like, so awareness of someone's bandwidth or capability or something like that to help. I don't know how to articulate
Kind
that.
of like a red flag, green flag in an office. You know, you're like, yeah, you can disturb me today, or no, you can't. Like not knowing.
Willingness to, like, I'm
openness?
super terrified when I email a shareholder that I'm putting them out, and I'm sure that they're reading that and being like, of course I can help, but I'm worried that I'm putting them out.
Or if you just ask, I'll tell you if I can or I can't.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so like fear of imposing upon somebody or putting them out. But this is all from a founder's point of view.
Not knowing the bandwidth. I don't know if bandwidth's the right word then. Imposing, she said.
Need a piece of paper. I think we could maybe this is just engagement, because then we're talking about founders and investors. this could be email updates are hard. Could be from investors, they're not full of the right information. For founders, they're hard to put together. So then they're from both sides of the market that we're looking at. And this is then the third one is asking for help or knowing how to help. And that's the two sides of the coin for investors and founders.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that's decent.
I think even these, I think all three of them can be for, now I'm being pernickety about the choice of words, but I think engagement is, so we heard from some investors, actually like hearing back from my founders is difficult. So I don't think that's one-sided.
That's
so
true.
Just engagement is hard, and that could be with my shareholders as a founder, or it could be with my investment portfolio companies because the founders don't respond to me.
Yeah, that's true. So like keeping up to date, like basic stuff, like you'd assume that all founders are keeping their investors up to date regularly, but that's assumption because some of them don't. Some of them don't because they don't want to. Some of them don't because they're afraid to, and some of them don't just because, I don't know, they think that there's nothing to update them.
And for sure in our, I'm going to call it an MVP, and definitely check back in on last Friday's conversation if you want to know what we're kind of defining as our MVP for Briefing Room. But I think each of these, we should be writing them generically enough that they are true for founders and investors. Because we'll know that we will then experiment in the future with one side of the coin, and this week we'll be doing another side of the coin.
Okay, so when we say importance of updates, I don't know, how would you say that generally?
Have you shared this with me?
Yeah, I have.
Cool.
We can go back
on to the next one, and we'll go on to it.
So in terms of the solution, our proposed solution has to do with building that engagement and building that trust. That's at least those are the words that I've been using internally for a while. Like when we wrote out to investors, we think that it's a issue of trust and an issue of bandwidth.
And that's what we're hearing from people, and it's to try and see what, I mean, you saw we just had the difficulty there, what words encompass and mean that for people.
Are those the right words?
I think we use them as a starting point, and then we test.
Okay.
During the week, people will be like, I don't understand what that means, then we use a different word.
Okay, so engagement, I'll just keep them
there.
Pop
them there.
So our solution is a low friction, so I think low friction is important because people don't have a lot of time, whether it's to create an update or to look at an update.
Get the information you want to see.
But a low friction way to measure engagement and to keep people up to date. I know that's not a very sexy way of saying it, but so like for example, creating something that then all of your investors need to create an account to log into, and they need a username and password, isn't going to work because they don't have the time. So that's too much friction.
Investors,
exactly.
And if each of their portfolio companies are using a different system, that's a pain.
Also, I think for founders, if they're using a really complex thing to create an email update, well, why not use MailChimp then? Like you want something that's super. There are solutions out there. So I don't think actually our email update system is going to be particularly fancy. The real fancy bit is beyond the emailed update, the way that you're giving them more, the add-on value.
So we've just had Fabs on the live stream chat on Slack has just pointed out exactly that. It's about the engagement, so it's the two-way conversation. So it's actually about how do I build trust by not just I'm putting information out there, you can view it, take it or leave it. This is a starting point. We're going to have a conversation about it. So you're right, it's not just once I put it out there, it's how do I hear back? How do I ask? What does that metric mean if I'm an investor?
Yeah, so like, I mean, I've kind of been thinking of it, like, is it passive? But it's not passive. That's the wrong word. But I don't mean like that. You want to give an investor or a shareholder the opportunity to deep dive into some details if they want to, but also make sure that they are briefed with all of what's happening.
It's the context.
Yeah.
So, for instance, a metric out of context doesn't mean anything. Understanding, well, this has moved because of this month, and this has been the challenge. That's what makes sense.
Like the best engagement that I get from our shareholders is when someone just responds to our updates. And they might say, I don't understand why you did this. Like, why did you think of doing this? Or I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like those things, that's really important to me. Because it means that you read it, and it means that you have an opinion.
Yeah.
And you might think that we made the
good.
wrame move, but that's okay. That's good.
It's also good to know if you haven't been clear.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
exactly.
I need to be clear.
So I think like that. But so I guess maybe what Fabs is saying is, how can we make that process either encourage it more, or bring down the barriers for people to respond to an email?
Right. So an example of that, and this is just because of our background in social. That you see it with emojis, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
cannot be bothered to tell you in writing, that's a really cool picture, Gilb,
Yeah.
but I can give you a thumbs up and
Yeah.
I've seen it, I've engaged,
Yeah.
I've had some sort of interaction.
Yeah.
And as a founder, I guess that's what you're looking for back, is there's an awareness that you've taken on board that information, and that if there is the need to then go back, then that's the starting point for the discussion.
Can I add low friction means using tools people already use, not another.
So it's another thing.
Yeah, not another thing.
No barriers to sign up.
Barriers for shareholders.
Yeah. Something that did come back especially from investors, was everyone has a different habit of where they sit and read their updates. So whether that's on their phone while they're commuting, or if it's sat at their laptop.
Yeah.
So having that access was important.
Make sure it looks good wherever you want.
Baseline. Is it about, so to challenge, and I know we can go back and really dig into this language once we've got it all mapped out, a low friction way to measure engagement and keep everyone up to date? Is it the measurement of engagement?
Well, but why are we doing this as founders? We're not only wanting to send updates, but we're also wanting to know that they're reading them.
Yeah.
And we're also wanting to know that if let's say we have a problem, something comes up, and I can see that this person that I really love to talk to about it looks at every single one of our updates and spends a good 30 seconds inside our room or whatever it is that we're building. I know that means that when I write to them, I don't have to say, right, so we have this problem and I need to give you a whole background, and by the way, this is what our company does, and this,
that came
that
out
makes sense?
massively in the research.
Yeah.
People were saying, actually, I have a fear of sitting down with my investors because I need to invest half an hour of my time just saying, do you remember what my business is?
Yeah.
This is my business.
Exactly.
If you know, actually, I can reach out and sit down with you for literally 10 minutes because you've been reading my updates for the past year. I know that you're up to date.
And some founders, you know who you are, but thank you very much. Some of them will we send our updates to other founders who want to kind of keep up to date, and other founders send them to us.
Yeah.
And like one founder updates that I get actually has a whole section, a whole part of every single update that says, just a reminder, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Right? Which is actually super important. Right?
Well, part
we don't
of it
do
is
that,
advocacy,
but
right?
it is.
So that
it's
I
a
can
reminder.
say, hey, do you know about Power Life? I want to be able to tell you all about them.
Exactly. But like, they feel the need to have to do that because they know that people might not remember, right? And so I think like when you're talking about engagement and measuring engagement and why is that important, I think that's why it's important. So if we can do that, and I'm using the wrong word, but passively,
Yes.
and like being able just to monitor, it's not about like spying on people. It's about just trying to see how engaged your shareholders are and your prospects.
And when we were listening to people, the reason that they chose a DocSend over something else would be because they could have that, I know who viewed the link.
And so I had this interesting conversation with an investor about DocSend. So I was like, I can send
What's
it to you.
What's the process? For those who haven't used DocSend, if you were going to send an investor update, what would you have to do as a founder? What would an investor have to do as a viewer? Sure.
So DocSend, first off, is a tool, I think, designed for sales. So it's for like sending PDFs to people. But the PDF, what's special about it is that it's a dedicated link. You can have it so that a person has to put in their email address to verify themselves so that they can see it. And you can also turn off the links. You can also update the PDF or the deck or whatever it is that you're sharing after the fact. So let's say I send you a pitch deck, and then I decide, oh crap, my numbers are wrong. I don't have to then email you back and say, oh, sorry, here's a new version.
Or
I can
we've
just
got a new
update
team member.
Yeah, we
can add them in.
Exactly. You can just add it. You can change it afterwards. Which is, and then you can obviously watch how long people, like DocSend gives you a lot of data in terms of so-and-so is accessing your doc right now. They are on page 3.
How many minutes have they spent on that?
They spent 2 minutes on page 1. They've switched to page 2.
The same
That's a little
if you would
intense.
if you're Google Analytics or you're looking at your website.
Yeah, it's kind of like Google Analytics, but for documents. And that's really great because it gives us a bit more control over our documents. But some investors aren't big fans of it because, one, sometimes you're not allowed to download the document, so they can't keep it for themselves. And I had a conversation with it.
That's a worry for them,
isn't
it? They're going to be able to look back and say, but in March you told me this.
In March we told me this.
What has changed?
Exactly. And there's that trust
fair.
thing because it's like, well, we've changed, so we don't want you to necessarily see that, right? But an investor was saying, like, whenever I get a DocSend link, it actually gives me anxiety because I know that you're watching my every move on here, right? And whether or not that's right or not, I think specifically,
just awareness of it.
Yeah, there's an awareness of it, but I think that's different to if you're a shareholder. Like, I don't think that if you were using DocSend, I don't think it's the best way to do it. But if you were sending something to shareholders using it, first off, why would you be using it to share something with them? But also, I don't think it would matter as much to see if you spent a minute on a particular page or 30 seconds. You just want to see if they actually read it. So I don't know.
If they had questions.
But going back to the passive, and I know that's the wrong term. There are a bunch of different ways that you can.
I guess by passive, just to clarify, are you saying as low friction as possible?
Low friction. I will say low
feedback?
friction. Yeah, exactly. So like investors that you're looking to, like prospects. How do you engage with prospects? One of the ways that we engage with prospects is we add them to our email update list. So I actually would love a way to see which one of those actually reads our updates and for how long. And some of them do respond with thoughts. Oh, I think that was a wrong move or that was a good move. Great. But
some of them are reading them, but we have no idea.
Yeah. Whereas if you're thinking, let's just use investor updates as a way of prospecting or a way of keeping prospects warm, that's a low friction way because you're not creating more work, you're not creating more content, you're not like surrounding them with noise, unnecessary noise. You're doing stuff that actually is interesting and valuable, but it's allowing them to be kept up to date in a way that showcases your honest progress instead of sending them a deck every month.
But that's something that I think we're going to have to explore is where is the line for people, because I honestly heard in a lot of the research a lot of blame from founders, investors don't do this, investors don't do that, but then similarly from investors, founders, we hate it, they don't do this and this. And like anything, it's, well, let's sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah,
and that's interesting, like in terms of this might not be product, but this is add value content that we can bring, and I think that's an important part of Briefing Room is, can we have conversations about this? Can we have blogs going out about this is how to say, what are your expectations, Mrs. Investor? How would you like to interact with me as a founder? Because how many people actually know what good looks like to their investors? And I think that's why there's a mismatch in expectations. That's definitely what I heard from people.
And investors don't want to let you down. And I think that's another thing, that like you're fighting with people's bandwidth, you're fighting with people's schedules. But fundamentally, if they don't really have time to help you, it's great if they feel comfortable and honest enough to say that.
And if you know that, then you've not got the frustration.
That's
you
great.
Understand that that's where the line is. And for some investors, that's actually all you are going to want.
Yeah.
You're going to want that investment from them.
Exactly.
And you're not going to want their input. They might not be add value investors.
Yeah, but I find that especially when talking with investors that aren't shareholders, they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to say no because they want to maintain their relationship. That doesn't help you as a founder, though. Like literally just tell me if you can help me out here or not.
So I think there's a large part of that came out of the discussions was, I think we all do it, we naturally tend towards it as humans, not giving direct feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
Like instead of saying I didn't have time to read it, oh yeah, I think it was fine. You're like, well, what about it was fine?
Exactly.
I think if you're getting that continuous low friction feedback loop, then that's going to help you knowing, well, actually I can steer this way or steer that way instead of it being months in between and not knowing if you're on the right track.
So I'm just adding a couple of other things for in our solution, what our solution has to have. I think a no account needed for shareholders.
Got ya.
You were saying works on multiple devices.
Yeah, across devices.
No downloads. Actionable insights for founders. Does it matter that you spent 2 minutes on this picture? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
And yeah, those are experiments that we have to run. That's brilliant. What kind of information is useful and actionable? As always, right? We can too much data. Like, what's the right data? Yeah.
So the unique value proposition. So we haven't done a huge amount of research into competitors, but we can start. Yep. We can start talking about this, and then know that we can remove it or change it.
Single, clear, compelling message that states why you're different and important.
I haven't seen any of the targeted competitors. Like the ones that I think are most relevant for us are something like DocSend and something like Visible or Founders Suite, just because it's an alternative or it's a competitor.
So essentially, say Visible as an example. It's the offering of Visible, which we can articulate, priced at and with the tools that are relevant for an earlier stage.
Yeah. So, but in terms of what's unique about us, and I don't know about Visible yet, but we won't require any account. So the passwordless element of it. So no account needed for your investors.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Okay, we're not messing you about. We're not making you join a Slack community. We're not joining. It's a technical differentiation. Yeah. I think also multiple lists. So compared with again things like Visible, it's just for your shareholders. It's for your investors. Whereas what we're saying is that this could be for your investors, and it could also be for your prospects, right?
So it would have to be that the price point is not deterring you from multiple lists.
Well, I wasn't even thinking about price point. I was thinking about features. Like literally,
but you can have multiple lists.
And you might have
in the same way, like
you might have different updates
segments.
Exactly, yeah, like different segments. So multiple. Like say you have a segment that is just your shareholders and that you're sharing a much larger, or you're giving them access to more data, and then you're having a different list that you're just not giving them access to some data.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to test. Do people share different things with prospective investors than they do with actual shareholders?
I know that. I'm pretty confident that some people do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think it's especially because of the fear of you're benchmarking my metrics.
Yeah. Multiple lists with customized data.
I'd be interested to hear from our community. I think as some people have talked about it already, is how do you go about this engagement and the relationship building element?
Yeah.
And part of that are conversations, frequency of physically meeting your investors. But for some people, you have investors all over the world and you're not physically meeting. Do you have regular monthly check-ins or calls? For others, it's sitting around a boardroom table and you're meeting, or you've got off-sites. This is going to be a part of that, and I think we should understand the full spectrum of this is a piece of technology that would fit and hopefully help solve a problem within part of that wider ecosystem of this is how I increase engagement with my investors.
Yeah. Unique value proposition.
We don't need tons.
I know, exactly. All right, well, let's think about
moving
more.
On.
Unfair advantage. You do that others can't buy our copy. Well, to be honest, we don't know yet. I mean, I think the fact that we are early stage founders does mean, hopefully, that we aren't thinking about this for larger companies. We haven't gone through that process, to be honest. We haven't had to flip the company into a Delaware corp, and we have fewer than 50 shareholders, and we aren't operating in secondary markets or anything like that. And I feel like I would hope that some of the temptation is if you start going down a rabbit hole, you're starting to build products for more and more complicated companies.
As in you feel like this initial market isn't big enough, I'm going to create bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, but maybe I'm just lying to myself though.
Rationalizing. Potentially. I think what's going to be really interesting is a part of this could be how many of those competitors have a community, and Briefing Room could have a community of early stage founders who are actually directly telling us what the problem is.
And deciding what features are needed and
voting on what features, saying what's in or what's out. Already we're helping people who've got that.
Okay.
That steer.
All right, we'll leave that for a second. We'll try and figure that out.
Customer segments.
We can do that. So, what do you think?
Early stage founders who have shareholders of their business.
Any shareholders?
Any shareholders.
Any number of shareholders?
Yeah. Because if it's an email solution, then they're currently emailing their shareholders. More than one shareholder.
But that send email updates?
Yeah.
Who have non-staff shareholders in their business. Right?
Why wouldn't you use it?
For staff?
Yeah.
So if we have 5 shareholders and we are 5 employees, why would I pay for
so you're
something?
assuming I use Slack already with my staff team, or
and I also imagine that they're more engaged because they're actually working on.
So you know what the work is that you're doing.
Yeah,
sure.
That's what I think. So what this is saying is like it's not for people with just the idea. It's also not. Let's just say who it's not for. Just according to this. How about those who are properly bootstrapping their business without any external, like,
no external investment.
Also size, probably you're talking about under a certain amount of, like, do these people
Size
have
of company or
shareholding, like raised?
Yeah, raised.
If you've raised, you know, maybe we should talk with some of these guests that we have on who have raised a lot more. If you've raised 10 million or above, would this be for you? Maybe. If you've raised 40 million, there are probably going to be other things.
That they're
At what point do you start using visible? And then how about on the prospect side, target customers? How about companies with prospective investors? How do you articulate that? You know what I mean?
So it means that they're looking to raise in the near future.
Looking to raise, but they have relationships.
They're building investor relationships. Essentially, they're out there networking for a raise. So that's anyone going through any kind of seed.
Yeah, exactly. So like for us, for example, we are raising a seed round, but a lot of them that get our investor updates, like we have several Series A investors on our email updates because we might be coming to them in a year or in 2 years, but if they've heard our name a few times.
Right, and we learnt that from companies out in Silicon Valley saying, speak to the people the next
stage up.
You're not currently raising from them, but you're keeping them warm. Like you say, they're recognizing your brand and keeping up to date with you.
Is that relevant? So a raise that's not active, so it's not like we are raising literally right now. This is not a tool to try and hammer home, please invest. And
it's not a deal flow.
It's not a deal flow,
right?
Yeah, and it's not a deal flow support. Okay.
Why not just a future raise? Building investor relationships for a future raise.
Raise. That's better. Okay, cool.
Do they have to? So a challenge. Do they have to be investors? Do they have to be people who will invest your money? Investor money. Are there other people that you'd be keeping up to date?
Stakeholder.
Advisors.
Yeah.
Mentors. Like what other
stakeholder relationships would that be? I'd say investors, advisors, mentors.
And what would it? This could be this is definitely not for it, or it could be included. I'm trying to think of ways that other people might derive value from it. what if you did have beta testers and they get access to more information about your company than other people do, and you're updating them?
Is that too broad though? Like, why would beta testers be interested in in how many, what our stickiness is?
So I guess what I'm saying is who it's not for though.
Oh, okay.
Is we're saying that our segment isn't in the same way at Kindaba. We say that people might use it for a friendship group, but we're designing it for families, so the feature set is for families.
Sure.
In what ways might other people? You already said, like if you're a cooperative or.
So maybe people for whom the product may be pivoted towards. Is that what you're saying? Like we don't know, but we're not focused on.
That's not. Yeah.
Okay, so people we're not focused on.
We're not making those decisions on the features for them, just now.
But we may in the future.
Well, because essentially what the list is for is potential pivots or potential white labeling.
Yeah. Beta testers, co-ops, like people who have successfully crowdfunded, I actually think they might be relevant because they have a lot of shareholders and that do want a nice way of engaging with them.
So when you crowdfund successfully, and what is it, like a couple of months after you actually get access to who has crowdfunded you? So at that point, when they're ready to start managing those people, when they get handed off from the platform, that's interesting.
And a lot of the things that maybe we should look at that for
successful raise, and then the outreach is how many months they then get access to them.
Yeah.
Because normally the platform handles
exactly. Yeah.
the relationship.
Yeah. And why co-ops aren't on there? I kind of feel like the reason is that co-ops require everybody, all shareholders, to vote on a lot of things, and so a lot of the co-op management stuff. I spoke with like Jen Horenjeff, which I think we're showing today.
I think she is on today.
Yeah, we're talking to her today. So she mentioned the tool that they use. So she runs a co-op, Savvy Co-op, and they have a tool that they use to manage like the co-op relationships. So if you're a co-op member, you might have hundreds and hundreds of members, and you have to then take votes on things.
And you do have to update, so that's a need, but they have to vote, and they have to get a certain number of people
Exactly,
to vote.
exactly. Yeah.
So it's a little bit more like a traditional kind of committee.
Yes. Yeah.
There's
you have to have a quorum, and whereas for limited companies, you may have that,
so
but you also may not.
So the feature set would be more evolved, especially for a one.
More focused. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Who else that it's not in development for? How about cap table management? If you're interested in cap table.
Deal cap table. Although we're talking about, and I think this is maybe potentially the risk, and I worry about this in terms of language, I would rather go narrower than broader, right? So for your investors and for your potential investors, I think the "and for potential investors" is maybe a distraction in terms of language and being all things for all people.
Yeah, but couldn't that also be like why someone would want to pay for it?
So potentially, but that's a test. Is it confusing or is it an added value? I want to pay for that. And the reason I say that is that a real need? Exactly.
Is it a real need? I hope it is. Okay. So then channels. Well, after this, we're going to be working on some lead gen ideas. So I guess we could probably.
But channels, even just bullet pointing really quickly, thinking of those people above. So any kind of founder community. So we've already talked about it, like product hunt makers. We could list, and we've got lists of these. Indie hackers, all the Slack communities, Lean Startup Slack communities, beta list. We talked about SaaS and SaaSter. And then the classic PR of who's just raised or who's just closed crowdfunding. So LinkedIn outreach, as well as any pay-per-click we want to do once we know what is the value that we're adding, and so therefore what are we marketing? Do you want to market before we've...
Education, like some sort of, like whether it's
so like YouTube channels or blogs. Content creation.
All right, we can come back to that. These are relatively straightforward. Sources of revenue is monthly or yearly subscription. That's what we're building a SaaS product. The amount, we don't know yet. Fixed and variable costs, we have obviously servers. They won't be very high. And then we'll fill that in later. The numbers that demonstrate success, key metrics that demonstrate success, we kind of,
So monthly recurring revenue,
yeah.
and then we'll want to look at our conversion rates at
Churn.
each bit of the funnels.
Yeah. Retention, which we can kind of go into a little later.
So because we'll want to explore what's the trial going to look like? What's
Yeah.
the activation from?
Okay. Should we take 15-minute break and then come back at the top of the hour to start
Yeah, I think
our
we
lead gen?
could do with some water top up.
Alrighty. So we're gonna pause. We're gonna pause this. We're gonna turn the stream off for about 15 minutes. Come back at 11 o'clock, and we're gonna be talking about lead gen and the ideas that we
Generate some ideas.
generate some ideas and brainstorm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Process.
All right.
See you then.
See you in 15.